Here with Ollie Connolly, one of my favorite guests. You know him, you love him, from podcasts such as What If Kirk Cousins Doesn't Work Out? We look pretty smart on that one. He looks like Kirk Cousins. Yes, he is the author of The Read Optional and the host of the Read Optional podcast with John Ledyard. Ollie Connolly, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
Are you you're in on the Boston Red Sox now again? They spent some money. You're wearing a hat for our YouTube listeners.
I am cautiously putting my toe back in. I still do not trust John Henry, who owns the team. My football team. The football team is top of the league, so I will give Mr. Henry maybe one last chance.
Okay, they did have a lot of success since John Henry took over the Red Sox, and hopefully for your football/soccer team as well. Okay, free agency is coming up, and we've been talking about looking at it from a team by team perspective, but I hadn't really gone through my top 101 and beyond, and just talked about the guys like I would want, the guys that I think would be great to sign in free agency. So we're going to keep this pretty simple. Ollie is one of my favorite football minds out there. I don't know how our listeners delivered. I told them last time, subscribe to the Read Optional. That's the one thing you can do to support us, is to support our guests here. So I implore you to do that, because they have some great content and some great podcasts, previewing the draft in great depth, an incredible amount of depth, Ollie. Before we get there, I want you to bring that sort of depth, maybe not all the way, but most of the way for this episode. We're going to go back and forth. It'll be very simple. Just guys we'd want to sign in free agency. Could be various reasons, because you think it's going to be the right time of his career, because you think it's going to be the right fit, because it's going to be the right money. I will let you go, because really I'm having you on just because I'm curious what your answers are going to be for this particular exercise. So start off with us, a free agent you want to sign.
My number one is my beloved Zack Baun.
Okay. Yeah, he was high on my list too.
Staring down the chance to be, depending on where Fred Warner's career goes next season, maybe the best all-around linebacker in the NFL. And I get all the downside concerns, which is different system, different spot. Do you bet on 1 year production, 1 year output? Age profile, having to pay that kind of money for a guy who's only done it for one season, changing schemes if he goes somewhere else. But if I was the Eagles, I wouldn't let him out of the building. And if I was another team, I would be doing anything I could to try and sign him up.
Yeah, I have been influenced by your analysis and my eyeballs when it comes to Zack Baun, and my strong stance that they're not going to let this guy leave. They can't let this guy leave. I know they haven't paid off ball linebackers in the past, but just watching their defense this year, other than Jalen Carter, and certainly putting Cooper DeJean in helped solidify the secondary, but he seemed like the guy who kind of made it all work, and there's not really any reason why it can't continue to work. I know he didn't do much in New Orleans, but that's old news now. Him in Philadelphia is something like you can see it with your eyes. To kind of explain maybe to the listeners what you think he did for that Eagles defense.
Yeah, he kind of changed the whole front structure of the group, where essentially they were able to move him and walk him around. And usually when you get these kind of defensive chess piece weapon types, people talk about that all the time, right? Particularly with the secondary guys or the safeties, and we can put him in this spot and that spot. And it's just really difficult to do when you don't set the terms of engagement. You don't know what's coming out of the huddle, right? What the offensive formations are going to be, where guys are going to motion and shift to. So really with those kind of plays, if it's not in the front in the pass rush, where you can kind of set the protection in certain senses where you put guys, you just want problem solvers, a guy who can move around you and take as many problems off your plate as possible, whether it's moving and shifting the formation in some sense. And with Baun, they essentially put him into what's like a walking linebacker role, where you play off the ball or you can walk down to the edge. And it's just really difficult to find. One, we have a linebacker crisis in the league. There's 6 good ones. He's one of them. It's really difficult to find a guy who can play off the ball soundly, who can go down to the edge and get a thump in the run game, who can give you some pass rush source off the edge as well. And then truly who can drop from there into coverage to pick up all the crosses and all the things the league's trying to attack people with. And he's just the all-around guy who can do that. To me, it's really similar to when Jermaine Pratt was with the Bengals. And I know no one cares about Jermaine Pratt, but he was kind of the secret sauce that made the Bengals defense go when they were making it to the Super Bowl, but he was never the kind of pass rush guy or blitzer that Baun is. So he really is in terms of coverage, fitting the run, and then just making plays on the ball, whether it's forced fumbles, interceptions. For where the league is at right now, if you want to run a defense somewhat akin to what Vic Fangio is running or just what Vic's running in Philadelphia, having that move piece you can play off the ball and on the end is like the number one gotta have thing. And he was just the best at it by far in the NFL last season.
That's bold, and yet I buy it. Like you just have the proof of concept, and you say there's an off-ball linebacker crisis, and I hear that, and yet that's the one of the positions in free agency which is pretty strong. At least there's 5 or 6 guys that you can make a case for. But Baun is atop the list because of what he did, and I shouldn't be totally influenced by this, but I am. Did you happen to watch the mic'd up of the Super Bowl with Zack Baun at all? Like he's heavily featured in that.
I have not seen that. No,
okay.
What was he like?
Well, first of all, I mean, you expect him, I guess, to kind of be a general and a leader of that defense, and he's just so fired up and all. You can just see how much he takes command of that defense and how important he is just as a leader. And yet, just the mental side of things, like after the Cooper DeJean interception, he clocks that, hey, you saw me over there. Now I'm forgetting the total details. And he's like, and you knew I basically had the flat covered and that there were 2 guys over there. So you just decided to do your own thing and peel off and watch them, right? And DeJean was like, yeah, that's exactly. He's like, oh, that's some veteran shit, you know? And I was just like so impressed. He knew everything that was happening in the moment. And it's just such a perfect fit.
It's truly impossible to overstate how much they changed their defense in like week 3. Remember when they crushed the Saints? The Saints were like housing everyone for 2 weeks. What a fun time that was. They completely changed defense because they moved Zack Baun's position essentially. And it just completely transformed them into being the best defense quite comfortably in the league. And to have that kind of impact when you've been a special teams guy, a situational pass rusher where the Saints like, there is no situation we'll let you rush the passer for some reason. Become truly the best all-around linebacker in the NFL last season. I thought he was the defensive player of the year, and he's available in free agency. The age concerns, if you've got to pay big money for the 29-year-old who's got 1 year of production, it's a real concern. I can't imagine that someone like Mike Vrabel, who has all kinds of cash falling out of his pocket agency, wouldn't be tempted to go and give it a try as a kind of cultural reset, knowing you're snagging, as I say, I think there's maybe 6, 7 difference-making linebackers in the league right now, and he would be one of them.
Sneaky old. I didn't realize that. He's 28. He will turn 29 at the very end of the upcoming season, but I didn't realize that. It would be funny because I was thinking Vic Fangio teams out there, in terms of who runs a similar defense. I was like, oh, he'd fit with the Saints. But yeah, they don't really. They're not going to welcome him back. That would be insane. They also don't have any cap space to sign Zack Baun. All right, I'll go next. We got it. We'll pick it up. But I want to spend a lot of time about Zack Baun. He was high on my list. One that I would want is Charvarius Ward. He is a free agent this year. He's been in the NFL for 7 years. He's about 10th on my total list. And he's coming off a bad year, which needs context. He lost his young child, and that's the most horrible thing that you can imagine a person having to go through. And he talked about, and he was away from the team, how much that affected him. And it was really a year-long process of, unfortunately, after his daughter was born, dealing with that. And he wasn't there, and he says he needs to get out of California. And I do want to put that there because I think it adds a little context to that. He didn't look like himself this year. He was still like an NFL cornerback. He wasn't terrible, but he didn't look like himself. But then I think back to the last few years before that. In just 2023, led the NFL in pass breakups, had 5 interceptions, was 6th in that category in terms of pass breakups in 22. Like, I was trying to think big Charvarius Ward moments in the Super Bowl and the conference championship and leading up. And so I went back and looked. It was like, well, yeah, he was never targeted. He got targeted once in those 2 games combined. And when I watch him, he always seems to know the coverage so well. An incredibly smart player, an incredibly tough player. There's that touchdown by MVS actually in the Super Bowl where he's calling out to like the rest of his defense. He kind of knows they're in the wrong defense before it happens. He's not the one that's supposed to be covering it. And just a very heady player. And the type of player I often look for in free agency. Who's a really good player that's coming off a bad year, but he's still young enough that you believe he has a high level of play to him. And it's Charvarius Ward, who I think might be at a little bit of a diminished value because of the year that he just had. but it's just an awesome, excellent player. A former undrafted free agent. I forgot what the Cowboys initially before the Chiefs picked him up, but he helped that Chiefs defense so much. He helped the 49ers. I think he'll help some team out there this year.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Intelligent, plays the ball in the air really well. I do just wonder what is the value going to be? Because I look through this cornerback class and I think you can go all the way down the list to your Enigbaris and your Hobbs, and there's some real great value to be had, particularly if you just want to have a true run around press man corner all over the place. Do you want to go to that top of the market? It just feels like every year people get burned trying to pay cornerback money at the high end of the market. I like him as a buy low candidate if you think that the money's going to be down there. But I imagine every team will be thinking along the same lines you are. And once Byron Murphy goes, maybe DJ Reed goes, I think he's going to be the top of most people's lists.
Yeah, Carlton Davis, I think, might get more money than him, and then he'll be in that. Asante Samuel Jr. might get more money just because he's younger. We'll see. You're right. I hope you're not right, because then I'm just basic. Every team is thinking the way I'm thinking. But Adebo, there's about 7-8 guys who are more top of the cornerback market. I have a feeling he's not going to get crazy big money, but I could be wrong. And maybe he'll have to settle for kind of a 1 or 2 year type of deal. All right, you give me someone else.
Tre'von Moehrig.
Okay.
Underrated, fun player in all of football. I think the working man's Buda Baker, the guy who plays all over the formation, plays behind the line of scrimmage, an absolutely heat-seeking missile, hits everything that moves as hard as he physically can. And if we can get him, ideally, to one of these teams who wants to have fun, who isn't boring and stale.
Okay.
Get into Vance Joseph, Brian Flores. Maybe Bynum leaves the Vikings and he's looking for a safety who can do everything for him. Maybe even the Cardinals say, what if we had Moehrig and Baker together? What a fun he would have. Just that level of versatility, playing all over the formation with that kind of fierceness. I want that guy on my team.
Yeah, so Tre'von Moehrig, I feel like he was pretty quiet the first couple of years of his career, and you were not the only one who gave me some feedback that I had Moehrig too low. Actually heard from someone inside the league that would have him much higher. I ended up settling on him between 20 and 25, and I probably should have had him higher because I think a lot of people agree with you, Ollie. What did he improve on? Because, he was in that last Mike Mayock class, maybe a little quiet the first couple years. I don't think much of America knows what Tre'von Moehrig's really been doing the last couple of years.
What he's been doing is hitting everyone in the face as hard as humanly possible. How can you not get excited? Doesn't that sound like a Mike Mayock player he would draft?
Yes.
Guys, people, he is crazy explosive downhill. They use him essentially in their like pressure and blitz packages. They'll just sub a linebacker out and put him in. It kind of muddies up what's happening on the back end, but they get the same kind of oomph off the ball as what if they blitz a linebacker. And he just makes so many plays behind the line of scrimmage. Their pass rush vanished off a cliff when Christian Wilkins went out, when they lost Max Crosby, and they kind of hit on the solution of what if we just send Tre'von every single time that we can. I think against the Chiefs, he blitzed like 15 times and all from depth. Poor guy had a cardio workout. And still has the bigger body, can kind of match tight ends in man coverage for you. He is often lost and clueless when he's deep and off the ball. So if he goes to somewhere like Baltimore or somewhere like that, we may be in trouble. But in terms of having fun, blitzing, attack mode type defense, he's the ideal fit.
Yeah, well, there's weirdly a bunch of teams that like don't have any safeties right now. The Jets don't have any safeties. The Dolphins actually would be maybe a nice home for him. The Bengals could use him, but I don't know if I don't know enough about Al Golden to know if he's going to be that creative. It would be fun to see him in a Cardinals type defense where they totally unleash him. I like that one a lot. All right, I'm going to go. Let's stay at off-ball linebackers at least. I don't mind being risky. I want to go Dre Greenlaw at this point in his career. Let's just get him on a 1 year. Like, so many teams have so much cap space. If he's not going to sign a deal unless he gets a bunch of guaranteed money, just give him a ton in 1 year and see what happens. And I am inordinately affected by the like 3 quarters of football he played in 24 because he's coming off a torn Achilles tendon. That's very worrisome. The fact that he re-injured it and it was a calf injury after that, very worrisome. And yet, if you're looking for a tone setter, you talk about Moehrig, like Dre Greenlaw in those 3 quarters made as many like monster hits and looked like the best linebacker in football for those 3 quarters as some linebackers hit all year. So I like taking a chance on him. You're a year more removed from the injury. Obviously, he didn't play a lot last year, so you're not spending top of the market money like you would with Zack Baun or even with the Nick Bolton. I don't necessarily think Greenlaw's going to get that kind of deal, but I think these are the types of chances that are okay to take in free agency if you have enough cap space and you're not doing a bunch of years on it. Like add Dre Greenlaw to your defensive mix and just kind of see what happens.
I like that if it's a team who is maybe trying to change the culture slightly, let's get some veterans in here who know where to be, know what they're trying to do. I can see that in terms you mentioned the tone setting thing. He was pretty limited at the best of times, the ideal foil to Fred Warner, but Warner was kind of the guy who was covering up all kinds of stuff for him there essentially. And every time they put someone next to Fred outside of this season, everyone looks pretty good. So off Achilles injury, calf injury, I would be it's pretty risky. But if it's to have everyone feel good when we go to training camp and we got some.
Well, no, you could just say you don't like the pick. I mean, you're trying to dance around it here. You don't like it.
I know. I don't. I think he's a really good player. I just don't know if coming off an Achilles injury, if you're a team who needs the position filled, if you're like the Bucks who are crying out, we got to get some linebackers in here, I'd be really worried if their pick was, let's go for Dre Greenlaw over Jamin Sherwood or something like that.
Okay, it is fair to point out there are younger, safer options at the position. Ernest Jones is an interesting one. Nick Bolton is another one. Jamian Sherwood, I think, from the Jets is going to be a popular choice. But, I don't mind taking a chance. All right, go give me another one, Ollie.
Gunnar Ford.
Okay, yeah, he was on my list too.
The stoutest run stuffer we have in the league right now. I don't think the Chargers should let him anywhere out of the building, but I imagine there'll be some semblance of a bidding war. This is his best season by far in terms of giving you some kind of pass oomph to go with the kind of early down run defense stuff. So particularly where the league is at right now with how many teams are trying to basically crowd up the line of scrimmage early in the down and distance, which is not where we were at even a couple of years ago. Teams are so split now with 5 men along the line of scrimmage to kick things off with a couple of deep safeties. Having someone who can at least be an effort guy in the play action world, that's the only thing you need from him is, can you sit down in the gaps early on and hold up against the run? And can you give us some effort and some push in the passing game? And he's, to me, is like, as the bowling ball body type where it's just like plant that guy down, seal off some gaps for us. He is right there at the top of the league based on last season.
Yeah, and not have to have it, as many down linemen like you mentioned. The only small concern, I've always loved Poona Ford, one of Mina Kimes' favorite players. The Chargers had this magical way of taking these guys that I personally always thought were underrated and suddenly turning their careers around when they would just look like about over. Like there was like 5 of them last year. Christian Fulton is another guy that's on my list. We might as well just mention him now. So Poona Ford is one. Elijah Molden, who they just re-signed actually, but would have been a good free agent pickup for someone. Tier Tart suddenly popped up on the Chargers and was pretty good. And then Poona Ford. So I don't know, there's some like magic Jesse Minter pixie dust that worked on Poona Ford that wouldn't translate elsewhere? Because he's coming off a season where he basically didn't get on the field much for the Bills and didn't get any money in free agency.
That's true. And Jesse Minter may be a warlock. I think he's about as good as we have right now. But I also Ford go one-on-one and embarrass Joe Tooney, go one-on-one and embarrass Chris Lindstrom, make Cesar Ruiz have nightmares for the rest of his life. So against good competition, he was not dominant, but pretty damn good. And then he embarrassed lower level competition. And that was all one-on-one. So I don't think it was necessarily just Minter.
So yeah, it's also, you're playing with these other great players. You're playing for an organization that expects the best and you raise your level. That's how I feel like I had to do today, knowing Ollie was coming on. So I actually went back and watched some more Christian Fulton tape this year. And I was actually a little less impressed than I was hoping to be, because there was an 8-game stretch with the Titans I always hold on to where it's wow, he really looked like a number 1 corner. I feel like he's a little undervalued. Watching the Chargers a little more at length, he had some tough matchups over the years. Like T. Higgins gave it to him for most of that game. Competitive guy. What are your thoughts on Christian Fulton? Maybe I'm not quite as high after going back and watching, but I do think he's a serviceable, solid cornerback that won't be at the top of the market.
Yeah, I think a serviceable guy, if it's more of a zone-based system and it's a lot of deep drops and a lot of make sure Christian gets the depth and keeps his eyes in front of the ball, I think that you're okay there. If it is, you're playing more matched up and we've got more one-on-one responsibilities, that's when he gets into trouble. I mean, all those Chargers corners, you go through them, the rookies, everything, everyone had a good middle stretch of the season. They were doing so many unusual things coverage-wise, kind of freaked everyone out, and no one knew where to go. Kind of gamified some of the the coverage stats in particular. So though that back end would be the one where I'd be like, I don't want to be paying for Minter's work on the back end. The guys up front are the ones I'd be comfortable giving Mac the deal for the deal.
Yeah, it's interesting too. They valued Molden, or Molden maybe just didn't want to see what was behind door number 2 and got a deal. I don't think we mentioned that on this podcast, but a nice little slot corner. All right, give me your next pick.
Brandon Scherf.
Okay, surprising.
All these teams have terrible. Have you seen the tackle market in this free agent class?
I mean, the offensive line in general, it's pretty rough. Yes.
A disaster situation. All these teams need tackles. All these team needs guards. You go to the draft, and there's probably going to be 4 guards selected in the first round at this point because everyone just needs any lineman that can help out. And Brandon Scherf last year, under the radar because the Jag season completely fell apart. He was healthy this year for the first time in a long time where he's been able to get through a season. I think it'd be pretty cheap to get him out of there. And I know that the Bears have made a move for Jonah Jackson, but somewhere like Chicago, where you can get a little bit more run centric, a really deep vertical play action type game, the way Ben Johnson wants to play. I thought by the middle part of last year, he was playing at pretty much an all pro level compared to the rest. Probably on the 30 all pro. Doesn't really have the juice anymore. Can't really give you some of the fun pull Brandon Scherf stuff we used to get, but just a one-on-one guy to enforce in the run game and then give you just enough in the passing game to hold up. I think it's probably going to be a pretty cheap, low fly bet on that guy.
Yeah, this is why I love having you on, because I think his uptick last year, and he's managed to stay healthy the last few years for the Jaguars, is pretty under the radar. And look, he's getting up there. He's almost, what is he, 33, 34. He's actually the last guard. He's 33 years old right now to be taken in the top 10, right? There hasn't been a guard since him.
Zach Martin went 6th.
Right. At the time, though, they tried him at tackle first. So a guy that you knew was going to be a guard, which I think Scherf was like that at the time. Maybe Will Campbell will be that guy for some team. They honestly, he could get taken in the top 10 and just put him at guard right away, depending on what team it is. I don't think that'll happen, but that's possible. But that's interesting. Yeah, while we're here, we don't have to just stick to the same format the whole time if I don't want to. Like, are there, because I'm curious if there's any other takes you have on the guards that are available. Tevin Jenkins, Mekhi Becton's going to be out there. Will Fries from the Colts. Kevin Zeitler's coming off like a halfway decent year. That's like the top of the market. Maybe Patrick McCarry, who you move him back to guard, who was with the Ravens, but he was probably better at tackle when he was there. Like, is anyone getting you going out of this class?
It's a McCarry, I thought, was pretty much a mess. James Daniels, I know, injured again. He played really well in the short snaps. We're able to see him. Fries is really, really intelligent. If you could just pull away Fries and Kelly together, you would actually have a competent offensive line. If you're the Patriots, for instance, saying, hey, Drake May, we need to get some adults around you, pulling off the double deal would be something I'd be interested in if I was a team. They probably will miss from week 6 onwards for you and be with the medical team, but you'll feel really good for those first 6 weeks. But it's a pretty rough market. Even Trey Smith, I thought that was a ludicrous thing to tag him at that price. I thought it was ludicrous, the contracts being floated around for Trey Smith. So it's just a pretty ropey tackle and guard market.
You thought Smith wasn't worth it because he got attacked a little bit down the stretch there by the Chiefs?
A little bit is being very kind.
Okay.
I think Smith is a really talented player. I think that he flashes a lot in the run game and the screen game, and we get the best screen coach in the NFL putting the really special talent out in space, and that stuff really pops and is good. He's just been inconsistent his entire career in pass pro. You don't pay someone over $20 million a guard to be inconsistent in pass pro, and when they moved Tooney to left tackle, teams teed off on him. They set their entire pass rush plan to attack a guy who's going to be the highest paid guard in the NFL, and he folded. Gave up 16 pressures in the final 3 games after Tooney moved to left tackle. Once you take away the 3 of them together, Creed, Trey, and Tooney, Creed always helps to Trey's side. And once you move Tooney outside and they bought Caliendo, and they started having Creed help towards Caliendo's side, and so teams just teed off on Trey. And it was a bit of a mess. I love the play. I love the talent. I get it. There's only so many guards in the NFL. He would probably still be in the top 10, but I thought it was a really inconsistent down year for a player who's supposed to be one of the 3 or 4 best at his position.
Wow. Don't let the dulcet tones distract you from Ollie just, massacring Trey Smith right there. Just an assassin. Let's stick on the Chiefs. I'm going to go to Sean Wharton. I thought you might take him. Maybe he would be on your list at some point, but he's definitely on mine. He just plays with a nastiness that is obvious when you see him on the coach's film too. Like he's always that guy like yelling after a play and like screaming as he goes to the sideline, screaming at the opponent, screaming at his players. I like that. There was that play in the Super Bowl, which is in my mind because I was there, that like Tyler Steen came in for one play and then Tershawn Wharton like got past him with a great inside move, and Steen like literally didn't touch him. It was the first play Steen was in. There's actually a bunch of plays where he flushed Jalen Hurts out very quickly. He pushed Landon Dickerson back on a couple plays. Unfortunately, Hurts got out and often made the play, but really a great playoff run in general. There was a play at the goal line where he just plants Josh Allen into the ground. He walked back Titus Howard. I'm really thinking about the playoff run in general, but a young player, a lot of moves for a guy who's 280 pounds. I just think plays with a lot of energy and fits a very rare type in free agency, which is that he's young, he has enough experience, but not too much experience. So a guy, hopefully, that's on the ascension at a position where guys continue to get really better and better at defensive tackle, kind of in their 4th, 5th, 6th year.
Yeah, one of my favorite plays, one of the sneaky, dirtiest plays in the NFL. You mentioned this through the whistle stuff with him.
Yeah.
It's just joyful watch on the film. And you don't really normally get the ascendant young guys who I think is actually attainable and gettable from the Chiefs. So I'm sure they'll make a good offer. And he was undrafted and has made no cash in his life. So you can go and probably get him for what would be an affordable rate. You may have to go and pay Milton Williams absolutely through the nose, right, to get him out of Philadelphia, though it seems like he's gone. But there'll probably be a bidding war for Milton Williams, whereas Wharton, I think, is the next band down. That is not really that much of a drop-off. Different style of player. One is much bigger, thicker, longer. Wharton is kind of the shorter, more explosive, light, penetrating type upfield rusher. I actually think he gives you slightly more on the rundowns than even Williams does do at this stage in his career. So I would be really surprised if there wasn't like 4 or 5 teams really trying to get on Wharton.
Yeah, I ranked him too low. I mean, you're saying there's not that huge of a gap. I mean, I love me some Milton Williams. He's on my list too. I'd certainly want to sign him. The price might get a little out of control. I should have had Wharton higher. Who do you got next?
Next, I have Nate Hobbs.
Okay, that makes me feel well because I've looked at some other lists out there. They didn't even have Hobbs on it, and I had him pretty high. I like me some Nate Hobbs.
Nate Hobbs is just a bump and run, follow someone everywhere they go, and you'll have 3 brain farts a game, and we'll all get really frustrated and throw our eyes to the sideline. But we'll get those 90% reps where he just gives all out effort. I think the injury concerns are fair, but 26 years old, you mentioned not on a lot of people's lists. I think people can get him really, really cheap this season, and he's not a versatile player. He does what he does, but for teams who want to be true man coverage teams, again, the Jets with Aaron Glenn going in, trying to find some extra pieces they can put there, I think Hobbs would be a really good bargain pickup.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. Similar age in terms of coming out of his rookie contract for me is Levi Onwuzurike. Big risk in terms of his health, that he could not stay on the field his first 3 years. I listened to some Lions podcasts, and they talked about maybe it was a little bit of approach to professionalism and a little bit of injury, the combination of the two. And Dan Campbell started talking him up kind of going into his 3rd year. He didn't quite stay healthy, that he's really had an epiphany in terms of how he's going to approach being a pro, and then had a really good year. I thought, from my eyes, in his 4th year, like a lot of pressures, sneaky high on the QB hits list. If you just search by all defensive tackles, Onwuzurike is there, just a big dude in a league that needs more big dudes. So you're hoping that the improvement that he made in terms of taking care of his body carries over. The Lions can't pay everyone. I think they'd like to keep him if they could, but he's kind of a similar type to me, as there's only so many young guys coming off a good year. And again, I keep mentioning with the defensive tackles, but it is a position where it does seem to take about 3 years to get used to being in the pros. And right now he is playing his best ball that we've seen by a good amount.
He definitely is. It does terrify me when you say the guy got himself into shape and cared when he was the contract season. I hadn't thought about that. That makes me pretty worried that the light only just went on. And so if there's going to be a bidding war, I think I would look elsewhere. I think the defensive line class here is really deep, and then the defensive line class in the draft is outrageously deep. So I think it's going to probably suppress this middle band of the market, I would have thought. So if you can get him on a decent contract, he would probably just return to the Lions, and you end up just trying to outbid the Lions for not a huge needle mover. He's one of the all-time, like, arrive to high five everyone at the quarterback.
Okay.
Like, he wasn't play, but then he just turns up and high fives everyone and says, good job. So if there's a guy who doesn't have that level of impact and he only got himself in shape for the contract year, that would make me a bit concerned.
That is a little concerning. I think Campbell started talking him up a little bit going into the third year that he was turning the corner, but then he didn't stay healthy. And then let's do a bunch of names quickly here at the end. Kind of speed round. Any other fun ones that are out there? I noticed we didn't pick any receivers. I didn't have any receivers on my list.
I really like Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Yeah, there was Westbrook-Ikhine and Josh Palmer. If you're looking for some kind of down the field juice, essentially, I think Ikhine has real gas, and I could see him sliding to the Chiefs, and then we get to third and forever against the Bills in January again, and here goes Westbrook-Ikhine behind the secondary, and Mahomes find him. If you're looking for a cheaper flyer down the field, I think that's the guy I'd go for.
You like him more than Darius Slayton or Marquise Brown or De'Ami Brown, or just because of the value?
Because of the value, De'Ami Brown probably the one ahead of him, but other than that, I think I'd bet on Westbrook-Ikhine with the age and the speed.
Yeah, when I was doing this exercise, it's like, yeah, I like Stephon Diggs, but he's coming off a major injury. And Godwin, of course, you like Godwin. I don't think he's gonna get to the open market, but he's coming off a serious injury. And I do remember the last time he was coming off one, it took a while to get going. There's other names like Elijah Moore out there. One name I threw out there was, and this is just I have a hard time quitting him, is like Mike Williams. Mike Williams and Marcus Davenport would fall into the category of like, you're not the dumb team that paid him last year. Okay. So if you're gonna do this, actually they're a year, healthier in theory. Davenport comes up with a new way to get hurt every year. But this is the year their value is going to be so depressed that it really is truly just a flyer. Do they have anything left in their career? Would it shock me if Mike Williams is a better version of himself this year and helps you out as a third or fourth, and Marcus Davenport helps you out with 400, 500 snaps for like 2 or 3 million? It would not surprise me, because these guys, they were pretty talented, and in their peaks, they were pretty good.
Williams, it was never had any evolution to his game as he ages. So if you're the Ravens or someone who's a contender who thinks, could we steal this guy pretty cheap and we at least get certainty in what the player is? I like that for the contenders, for the Bills and the Ravens.
Yeah, he's going to be like a fourth receiver. I'll throw out my final just sort of speed round guys. Third round, but you don't usually pick up third down backs in free agency, but like if Ty Johnson or Kenny Gainwell only cost you like $2 or $3 million, just like, okay, let's settle that position. Those are two good players. It's like one less thing that you have to worry about. And then of all the backups, I always rank Jameis Winston too high, and I stand by that. But it's actually, I wouldn't hate getting Jimmy G as my backup this year. I feel like he's a pretty good backup.
Are you sure?
I mean, maybe it's that Week 18 game against Seattle where you saw the McVay sprinkle on him, and the fact that they were sneaky okay, I think, with going into this year with Jimmy Garoppolo and a rookie if they didn't keep Stafford. I was like, okay, maybe like a Garoppolo that's had a couple years to just be healthy as your backup. Can he come in for 3 or 4 games? I'm okay with that, but maybe you're not.
I would not. I would just draft 2 guys. That guy in Canada is playing. I just take 2 guys in the draft and hope for the best. Let me throw a couple more at you that I think. Josh Uche, one of the strangest free agents available. Last season for the Patriots, or the year before, I should say, unbelievable production off the edge. Then he basically isn't interested in playing this season. He gets traded to the Chiefs. I really thought you would have a serious third down impact for them in the playoffs. Just one of those, it's flashing up and Collinsworth is losing his mind. Like, how did they get this guy? Where's he come from? And just nothing happened. I'm sat there thinking, would I rather pay Hassan Reddick $15 million or take Josh Uche for $3 million and see if there really is the player from the Patriots 2 years ago in there?
Okay. It's a little worrisome he could just not get on the field for the Chiefs. And not like shocking, he couldn't get on the field for the Patriots a lot. I don't know what's going on there.
It is peculiar. Noah Enigbari, the corner for the Commanders, I think is really the hidden lost corner in the free agent class. He is consistently lost on the field all the time, which I know sounds concerning, but they do run some pretty complex stuff and he looks confused there. But if you just, again, have a true man-to-man corner, if you're in a man-heavy system like Nate Hobbs, I think that he is a good cheap pickup there. Then Baron Browning with the Cardinals, he gets traded to the Cardinals out of nowhere. He's having an unbelievable year off the edge. You look at some of the pressure rate and pass rush win rate stuff, he's right there with Myles Garrett and the very best in the league. I don't think that's necessarily true of the player he is, but he has real juice off the edge. So I think I'd probably rather do the Uche Browning pairing, see who's healthy and wants to play football, than I would sign maybe some of the top end guys.
Yeah,
And that's
Hassan
all I'd
Reddick.
be out, Greg, I'd be out of a job. I'd lose my mortgage. I would not be able to run a franchise.
I mean, spending money on a Hassan Reddick or whoever it would be, even a Josh Sweat, who's going to be reliable but probably overpaid, that traditionally hasn't worked that well in free agency. Reddick's a fascinating case that people just throw out that year. Now, I can't believe we made it through this whole thing without mentioning Kaiser White. You know, I feel like is the North Star for both of us.
We've let ourselves down, if anything.
I know there's too many off-ball linebackers available. There's too many names, but I'm glad we got through. Like, there's the big names on top of the market. We had a couple of those. Oh, I forgot one of my favorite ones. I'm throwing him in. It's Malcolm Kuntz. I know he's coming off a torn ACL, which is pretty major, but man, that last 8 games of the season that he had for the Raiders, the way he like dipped around the edge, it was against really good players too. It was like against Rashawn Slater and some really good that he just made look silly. So that's a young pass rusher. In theory, he got injured so early last year. He missed the whole season that he's had some time to get ready. That's one where I always think injured players, like, why not sign them for like a 2-year deal? It's going to be cheaper than other teams and give a shot for a pretty young, good pass rusher. Malcolm Kuntz, I'm ending with.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one as well. I'm structure the contract there where you do the 2-year deal, you mess around with the numbers however you want. If it hits, you've got a cheap guy for the second season. I'm all on that. One of our true dip and rip pass rush artists, which guys don't really win that way in the league that much anymore. They usually get Shane Raid out of the league. You kind of have to play with more power. It's funny though, as we went through the list, I have together we have 3 guys there of young Raiders guys for a team that we stinks defensively. Though I really like Patrick Graham, so I wonder if they just try and retain them all, if they truly hit the market.
Yeah, I asked John Spytek about that very thing last week at the Combine. Say, on our show, he didn't really have a strong answer for that, other than, those are good players. There are some good play. He said some, which I clocked. He's like, yeah, there are some good ones, and we do want to keep those. So we'll see. I just remember.
Did he have a look in his eye that said, I have to ask Tommy before I get back to you?
No, he in fact said the words, I don't just have this job because I'm friends with Tom. And he pointed out, and I was glad I asked this, like, did you even know Tom Brady in college? And his answer was essentially no. It's like, I was like, people are like, oh, he was like college teammates, he's buddies. Like, I don't think he even knew him. He was on the freshman scout team, and Tom Brady was, playing against Alabama as the senior quarterback. He said Tom was cool. He would like sit with all the freshmen every once in a while. But that's like one guy at a table of 20. So he was careful to point out, yeah, he didn't even know Tom Brady back then. But Malcolm Kuntz, that's a name to know. I just remember he wore Garrett Bowles out a couple of years ago. So that's one I like. Free agency, just a couple of days away. You guys are very draft focused right now in terms of your podcast. Are you going to do any free agency coverage with John? We got to have John back on the show too.
We will do 2 long free agency breakdowns, probably Rogan levels of analysis on why Jamin Sherwood going to a team really matters. Then by November, I'll feel silly. But yeah, we'll hit the free agency.
Yes, it is strange to hear Ollie talking at normal speed because I have to admit I do crank it up to 1.5 because of what you said. The Rogan levels of just like 20 minutes on a defensive tackle. I love it. But just speed it up. Ollie, one of the best to do it. Fun breaking down the free agents with you. That's it for this show. This has been a packed week, but we are not done yet. We still have a couple divisions to look ahead in terms of their offseason preview. Got my show with Daniel Jeremiah. Free agency is back, so is football. We'll see you next time.